Welcome to this edition of Cardinal Clips, and we're here today with Justice Paul Anderson of the Minnesota Supreme Court. We're very pleased to have him here in Willmar today. Justice Anderson, we're glad to have you here in Willmar. I understand that you've been here before to do this kind of a program.
Oh, yes. I've been here any number of times, and of course, Willmar is very familiar to me because we have a cabin out on Big Candy Ojai Lake, and so in the summertime, and now we got one that's winterized, we're in Willmar regularly, so I know Willmar pretty well.
Well, that's a good deal. We're glad you're part of our community, kind of.
I'll tell you is that when the local bar association meets, everybody gets up and they say they're from Willmar, they're from Olivia, or they're from Benson. I get up and say Paul Anderson, Fallon Township.
And they all know where that's at.
They all know where it's at. They do.
As a justice on the Supreme Court, what do you think the overriding reason was you got named?
That's a very good question as to how we get on the court, and particularly relevant because Governor Dayton just made an appointment of Mimi Wright to the court. One of her first sittings will actually be out here in Willmar. I turned 70 in May, so Governor Dayton will be announcing my replacement. Minnesota, the governor gets to appoint unless there is a vacancy that's an open election. The only person that's gotten on our court right now from open election is Alan Page. He ran for an open seat in 1992. I was very close to and did a lot of work with Governor Arne Carlson, and must have impressed him enough so that he appointed me as Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals. That was 1992. And then in 1994, he chose me and elevated me to the Supreme Court. So I've been on the Supreme Court in 94. We all come to the court different ways. Mimi Wright, this last process, I really don't think that Dayton really knew much about her before the selection process, and most of those people that were in the process he didn't know, but he went through a very rigorous vetting process with the candidates. I know that because I talked to him about it. And Mimi Wright just came out the best in that. Is that the governor was even so meticulous is that the night before he made the decision, he read about 4 or 5 of now Justice Designate Wright's opinions to see, the quality of her writing. So it's all kind of a different. But here's what I tell people about being on the court. There's no way you can really explain that well how you got here as opposed to somebody else. But once that happens, you need to understand what a privilege it is to serve the people of the state of Minnesota. I mean, it truly is a privilege. And the only way you can repay it is to do this. 1, understand the legacy question, which means you got to leave things better than you found them. You got to make society better. You got to buy into the Jeffersonian idea of pursuit of happiness. You need to structure society so people have the maximum opportunity to be content and happy. And second is you got to earn it, and you got to earn it every day. Just go in and try and do your best every day.
As you look back, was there any case that was particularly frustrating to you as a justice?
Yeah, there have been many. That they're difficult. We get a lot of difficult cases. People may be surprised when I say that one of the more difficult areas is how we deal with sexually dangerous persons in our society. There's just been a district court order saying that Minnesota's got to change. That whole issue has been as close to the edge as I would ever like to go to the Constitution. There have been some cases dealing with individual rights, protecting. Here's what happens when you've been on the court for a while. I've lectured in the Philippines, China, Russia. I was just in Libya and Tunisia this past summer. And I'm talking about a constitutional democracy, elections and how those work. And the longer you're on the court, the more enamored you become with respect to our Constitution and understand the role of the court in interpreting the Constitution and protecting the people's rights. And that probably gets to me, to answer your question, one of the more recent cases is we had a case before our court with respect to voter ID. And I'll leave it for you to look at what I wrote in that case. But I found that case to be very vexatious, very frustrating, both the way it was postured and set up, and also with respect to the result.
When you look ahead, there's a couple of constitutional amendments, and if you're kind of a constitutionalist supporter, do you see any red flags that may be on the horizon with either one of the two amendments that are being voted on?
Now that's a question that puts me close to the edge as to what is my proper role as a judge. I'm going to answer it in a particular way, is that I'm going to explain what a constitution is. And so when the people face these issues, they understand what they're doing. In its simplest form, the Constitution is a contract between the people and those who the people put in a position of having sovereign power. It's an agreement. We want to live in a society where every one of us is individually free, and sovereignty resides with each of us. But you want to know that my ability to swing my fist will stop at the end of your nose. So you want to live in a lawful society. So we got to cede some power to those in government. And that's what the contract is between the people and those we put in power. But as Alexander Hamilton said in Federalist 78, sometimes ill humors arrive from the people themselves. And so the current day is that, you could see that in separate but equal with respect to the treatment of African Americans in our society. You could see that with respect to any aspects where people, the McCarthy era, for example, and there's a role for the courts to enforce the contract. And see what a constitution is that it is a codification of what is supposed to be the fundamental and most basic law, what's supposed to endure, and something that is to survive the ups and downs of current. It's one of the best explanations is that, and the students here will probably have studied Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, and is the best example is you remember when Ulysses was going past the island with the sirens. He knew that he would lose rational thought upon hearing the siren song. So he had his men tie him to the mast, and then he plugged their ears. That's what we do with the Constitution. In order to avoid the ill humors, the tyranny that could happen in a current time, we tie ourselves to the law through the Constitution so that we have a level stability. So when the people consider amending the Constitution, they need to understand what a special document that is. And they need to inform themselves fully as to what they're doing. So my best advice to the people of Willmar and the state of Minnesota is inform themselves. See, I get excited when I talk about the Constitution, but Thomas Jefferson said, in talking about there's a lot of people that don't trust the people to exercise their control and their power properly through the vote. And he said, if you have questions, and if you worry about the people exercising their power properly, the answer is not to take the power away from them, but to educate them. And so as we approach the election this fall and the constitutional amendments, my best advice is follow Thomas Jefferson's advice. Educate yourself, educate each other, understand how special the Constitution is, and then vote accordingly.